All right, so hi Garret, thank you so much for stopping by and being a part of the show.
Thanks for
How are you doing?
Good.
I always like to start my podcast like kind of taking it back to when, everyone is a kid, because essentially most of the time I feel like it always plays an impact as to, what we end up doing in life. So would you mind sharing a little bit about some of your history as, growing up and stuff?
Yeah, so moved here freshman year of high school to the Rockford area, Winnebago. I was kind of heavily involved in BMX, so we moved out here, and I raced BMX bikes all over the country, did nationals and traveled a lot for racing bikes, and did freestyle. I used to run the Pit Skate Park. I'm sure a lot of the listeners are familiar with the Pit Skate Park. It was, closed in 2004, but it was kind of a staple for skateboarding when the first big Tony Hawk boom happened.
Oh, got it.
So I ran the park there, got to meet a lot of people around here from, the skateboard and BMX community. Pit closed in 2004, and I got asked to join this band. And back when we had the skate park, we had like punk rock shows all the time. Cool side note, we had Fall Out Boy one time. We paid him $50 and 2 pizzas.
Really?
Before they didn't even have a record out yet.
Oh my gosh!
So it's kind of cool though.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had these shows all the time, and back then I had zero interest in being in a band or being in a I just wanted them to hurry up and play and get off the ramp so we could ride. Pit closes down. I got asked to join this band. I kept saying no, and finally my buddy talked me into it. I'd always been into journalism, and I love music. And book shows and help promote shows and whatnot. So he's like, just come jam, just come check it out, come jam. I'm like, what does jamming mean? I don't even know what that means. He's like, just come try singing into a microphone. I'm like, I don't know how to sing. I have no idea.
Really?
So finally he convinced me with it, and had a lot of fun, went to a practice spot and jammed some songs for a couple hours. And then I think I went back another time, and that next time I went back, he's like, we have a show in 2 weeks. And I'm like, what do you mean we have a show? Yeah. I don't even know what I'm doing, or, we don't have songs for a show. Like, we have all the songs finished. You just have to write the vocals, and we're going to go play. Yeah. It was like a show at Highland Community College out in Freeport.
Wow.
So that was around 2004, 5-ish. And we ended up doing that band for a few years, playing locally, and the band got signed to a pretty big indie label called Rise Records in 2009. Did 3 albums with them, then we got signed to a major label, did 3 albums on the major, and spent years on the road touring full time.
So you're the one of the lead singers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's so interesting. So you were never into singing before or anything like that?
Not at all. It's kind of like everybody in the band were elite at their instruments, and then you have this guy that's never had any kind of vocal training or any kind of training at all, just thrown into fire. So I just kind of had to learn fast, especially when you have a show coming up in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Wow. So I want to mention, so I watched Racing for the Soul on Our City, Our Story. So I watched that, which I'll be linking that so everyone else could watch it. What stood out to me was you being raised by a single mom and being shy, and that's me. So that's why I related a lot to that. And then you said that BMX is what you've been doing for years, and what kind of helped you.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the parallel that Pablo kind of identified when he created the story was BMX is kind of what brought me out of my shell. Growing up with a single mom, didn't really have a father figure growing up, so for me, going out to the track and learning how to be, in a group of peers your age, and you get a little better, and then you start getting competitive, and with being competitive and progressing into an expert level, you start getting confident. And it's funny now, all these years later, I'm our announcer at the track, so I do a multitude of tasks out there. But my main duty out there is the announcer on race day.
Oh wow!
So it's funny to look back. When I was a kid, I couldn't hold a conversation with somebody because I was so shy and so nervous about everything.
Yeah.
And you fast forward, and look back on that paper trail that you left, and you were like the singer of a rock band playing to thousands of people every night of the week, and now you're an announcer at the very track that you couldn't hold a conversation with someone at.
It's so
pretty
interesting.
Cool,
Yeah. Did your mom support you through because I feel like I've heard a lot of people would say something like, oh, that's too dangerous. Was that something
So my mom and I had a very unique relationship. And I all these years later, I lost my mom recently. She passed September 15th.
Yes, I did say that, and I am so sorry for your loss.
Thank you. I've learned, getting older, you understand things on a different level, and you have a different maturity at, later in life to understand why things were the way they were. Right. My mom was relentlessly dedicated to the perfection of her craft. She was a horse youth trainer, so she gave riding lessons and trained youth kids to show horses. Mm-hmm. She did horse shows, all over the country. She produced world champions. She at her funeral, we laid out on a table all of her, champions that she had, and at the shows they take this professional photo with the rider and the trainer and the parents and the awards, and she had a whole table full of them, and that was just the stuff I could find from the early 2000s. She did it since she was a kid.
Wow.
So she to this day has never seen me ride a bike. She came to one show. We played the Rave in Milwaukee, and it was a sold out show. Mm-hmm. And my aunt drug her up there and made her come to the show to finally see, my mom was like me at a young age. She's very shy, unless she got in something that she was comfortable with, and then she was like the best on earth at it.
Yeah.
So, I think it upset me a lot in kind of like, your early post-adolescent years. Mm-hmm. But, later on now I can look back, and she just was dedicated to what she did. And I respect that tremendously.
Yeah.
I kind of the same way. I get really, really dedicated to things that I do, and I excel in them because that's all I do for, a set amount of time.
Right.
So
now, do you feel like it, cause you said something about her perfecting her craft in that. Do you feel like it rubbed off on you in any sort of way?
Absolutely. I think subconsciously, I didn't never really realize it did, but I look back in different hobbies and interests and things I've done in my life, and when I choose to do something, I go 110% at it. I didn't really excel in school. I actually went to a learning center called Sylvan Learning Center. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. I think they're still around. Mm-hmm. And somewhere in one of my boxes of trinkets and whatever, I have one of those little blue tokens that you get for, when you do something the right way, so many times you get a reward. That's kind of crazy because I had a really hard time speaking. I had this speech problem when I said R's and L's. I had this weird speech disturbance at a young age, and then you fast forward all these years later, and now I'm on a podcast, so I did something right.
Yeah. That's awesome. Now, when you were doing the BMX, and you said you got really good at it and everything like that, did you ever travel for that? Or
yeah, we did. In the racing days, nationals happen all over the country. So I was going to quite a few nationals and competing at a national level. I remember in 1998, I went to the Grand Nationals. It's the biggest race in the sport in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Wow.
And crashed and lost my spleen. Had to be airlifted to the hospital. And
oh my gosh.
Stayed there for an extended 3 weeks. My spleen was lacerated, so they had to remove it. Mm-hmm. And had to take an extended vacation to Tulsa. But yeah, I did that up until, I want to say, the late 90s, early 2000s. I got real big into freestyle, working at the skate park and whatnot. So we did stunt shows all over. We did, remember one summer we did Rockford Public Schools. I think we did a majority of them. So it was like every school in Rockford. Mm-hmm. Later on, I've had people tell me that they were at that show in school, and I signed their poster because we had these posters that had us on there, and we had to sign them for everybody.
Yeah. And
it's wild. Yeah. Like how life works like
that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, just quick, kind of going back a little bit. So did you learn how to ride? Do you know how to ride horses then? Pretty well? I showed a horse once when I was 5, and I hated it, and my mom never made me do it again. Really?
And another thing I respect her tremendously for.
She never forced and pushed you to do something.
Forced me to do it.
That's pretty cool.
Yep. So, but I won my first place trophy. I have it still to this day.
Yeah.
I was 5 years old, but that's all the only interest I had.
Wow, that's interesting, but cool at the same time.
Yeah.
I actually didn't even know that we had a BMX thing here. So here in Rockford, do you mind telling us more?
Not a lot of
about
people do, and I think being where I'm at in life now, it's kind of like a responsibility of mine to give back. I'm involved with the volunteer crew there, and I do a lot of things behind the scenes at the track. And, that place gave me so much as a, impressionable, preteen adolescent.
Right.
I mean, I think that BMX track and the owners of it, Jake and Candy Carroll, they've done it for, since 1977.
Oh, wow. I
think they're responsible largely for, things I've done and things that attributes that I have and personality traits that I have.
Yeah.
I was on the volunteer crew as a young man, and, Jake would give me responsibilities, and I was out working with the older guys, and, I couldn't even drive yet. I'd have to get dropped off and work all day on the track and then get a ride home, hope I could find a ride home, or I was riding my bike. So, learning work ethic at that young of an age is really important. My mom taught me a little of that too. I'd have to go out in the barn and stack hay before I could go race. And there was a couple times where, if I didn't get hay stacked, I wasn't going to the track that day. But for the most part, she didn't really force me to do barn things. That was her realm, and I was into other things. So kind of when the car happened, I got less and less into being in the barn and more about being in the track.
Yeah. So it sounds like it was essentially like a home foundation for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even a family with.
Yeah. And I see it's the same for a lot of kids out there. And that, this is a time now where it means a lot to me. It's important to me to give back any way I can and, keep introducing more people to it. So I was really thrilled that Pablo did Our City, Our Story, with the track involved, because that's the goal for all of us out there as volunteers. We just want to introduce this. It's a diamond. It's one of the, top-rate tracks in the country, and no one knows it's there.
Yeah. Do you see, is there a lot of kids involved at the moment?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We have our national race out there, the Midwest Nationals we host every summer. That brings in, 5,000 to 6,000 people from out of town. And on a regular race day, there's 400 people out there racing. So. Wow. Yep.
What's the rate of injury? Because I feel like that could be a concern for many parents.
Not too bad.
Not too bad.
Statistically, it's safer than hockey, football, basketball.
Really?
Yeah, there's, a lot more people that do those things versus BMX, but statistically, it's safer than school sports. And you never sit on a bench.
Wow. Now, is there anyone training there, or is it just kids kind of just learning and doing their own thing?
Yeah, so we have a beginners league program actually that we implemented 4 years ago. So that's kind of a chance for, kids that are foreign to the sport, parents that are foreign to the sport to kind of, learn what it's all about and get in a program where they can learn, on the track in real time and have coaches on hand and bike maintenance coaches on hand and mechanics, whatnot.
Right.
So, we started doing that. The track's open. We have a practice night and then race every weekend, all summer. We're working on trying to find an indoor facility so we can continue throughout the winter.
Oh, nice. So, yeah, that is true, because it's mainly outdoor, right?
Yeah, and you get all this steam. You get all these new kids into the sport, and they're all excited, and they're acclimated, and then they're nothing for the winter,
Yeah, that'd be cool then if they could do that. I guess, how would somebody go about, because do you guys have I'm sure you have a Facebook page?
Oh, yeah, Facebook, Instagram, just Rockford BMX.
Okay.
Yep. It's, and there's always somebody out there willing to help. So it's, the best volunteers on earth out there. So there's always people, there for questions or need direction.
That's awesome. Now moving into the second, I think, thing that you're known for is your band. Mm-hmm. So it's the Color Morale, correct? And it's a metal band?
No,
would you consider it?
In the early days, we're kind of a little bit everything thrown into a blender. I would say, currently we're more of like an active rock band.
Active rock. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I was doing a little bit of research, and like I was telling you earlier, I saw somewhere it says Forum 2007, Forum 2005, which is right.
I think it was around 2005.
2005, okay. And we also mentioned about before you got online is your band vocalist, right, and the keyboardist.
No, we never had
That's
keyboards.
What it said on there.
There's a photo of me somewhere. I was doing all these stupid like keyboard stances.
Got it.
You know how guitar players have their power stance they do?
Yeah.
Well, I was trying to make up a keyboard power stance, and it was a joke. And it was at a practice one time.
And now
and
you just
never played keyboard in my life.
So you've never played any instruments before?
Yeah, a little bit. Guitar and bass. Pretty much anything you can tune. If you can figure out how to tune it, you can figure out how to play it.
You can kind of do a little something.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And you talked about like the vocal part is just came when it came. It's not like you had been practicing or.
Yeah, I like I said, I kind of just got thrown in the fire, and we started playing shows, and we gathered a pretty big following pretty quick. So when you've got 200-300 people coming to your shows on the weekends, it's like I should probably learn how to sing, take some lessons and figure out how to do this better,
So how did the band form? Because I was looking on Wikipedia, which I know is not the best, but I saw on there it was originally like a group of people, and then that broke off, and like new people formed the band later on.
Yeah, we were a band by the name of the Killer Apathy. We played local shows, maybe an hour away, hour and a half away from Rockford, but never anything too far out of town. So we kind of made the decision to, change the name, start over, kind of, get a couple of new members and kind of, really decided we wanted to try to do that for a career and try to make something of it. So we saved up some money, wrote some songs, and went and recorded with a producer that had been releasing some of the biggest stuff, spent a pretty good amount of money to record a 5-song EP. And that was back in the MySpace days. So we put the track on MySpace, the first single, and had all these people come to us. And, like one of them was like one of my favorite bands of all time, Armor for Sleep. Their singer messaged the band's page, and I thought it was a joke, like somebody made a fake account, and, but he left a cell phone number to call, and he wanted to talk about the band and what our plans were, whatnot. So I called the number, and I'm like, he answered, and I know his voice because I'm a big fan of the band. So I'm like, wow, that's really him. Cool. Yeah. And he ended up managing the band and getting our first deal with Rise Records for us.
Wow.
So off of one song.
That's like a once in a lifetime. So, very lucky. Cool. Some of the major themes that popped up for me were like within the music that I noticed that, like the song titles and everything like that was like religion and mental health. Mm-hmm. Would you agree? And like pain, struggles, but also have like a positive, like silver lining kind of a feel to it.
That's funny you just said that because there's a track on the third album called Silver Lining. And it's one of those big pop stars has a quote that's everywhere on the internet that's you can't lead a positive life with a negative mind. And I completely disagree. Like that's the lyric in that song is you can still lead a positive life with a negative mind. So for me, being creative has always been an outlet to take something you're struggling with and make something good, as a result from it. So for me, that No Hope record, which turns 10 next year, I'll get into that a little more too, because I haven't talked about that anywhere yet. We had a conference call last night, actually, so this is good timing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a question I was going to bring up. So,
But I've always felt like, being completely transparent and honest with stuff you're dealing with or, internal strife or conflict, talk about it, put it in a song. I learned that right before we became the Color Morale. There was a young man that used to come to a lot of the Killer Apathy shows. And again, in the MySpace days, I remember him sending a message to the band's page, and he said he was going to kill himself. And I, didn't really know how to handle it. I just kept communicating and sending messages back, and he'd send them back and send them back and back and back. And after about an hour and a half went by, he was fine. He like completely had moved on to a different topic and was talking about, I was just making small talk for an hour and a half.
Really?
very nervously on my phone.
Not
Actually,
to
I
say
think
the
it was on
wrong
a
thing.
laptop.
Yeah.
And, I didn't really know how to handle that, but for me, like I went through a lot of, complex times as an adolescent youth, and things that I didn't quite understand, and places I didn't feel like I belonged. So just by being open with him and transparent with him, I feel like I talked him off the ledge, and that kind of introduced me to, man, if you put that context into songs as a creative mind, you could probably help somebody out with it.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was in for with that. We'd have days on Warped Tour where I stood in a line for 5 hours and just talked about stuff people were dealing with. I didn't understand the magnitude when we did that No Hope record. I didn't understand what the result of that would be. And that record catapulted the band's career. And, it's a unique perspective when you're talking about detrimental things for hours straight every day for months. And it takes a toll on you.
It does, yeah.
I'm not a psychologist or a trained professional to handle those things.
Yeah.
So that became very overbearing for me personally. But, my reward every day was never in money or in how many followers I had on social media. It was, seeing people organically connect to the music and seeing it help them.
That's good to hear that there was a positive feedback. Did you ever feel like you received negative feedback for something like that?
Our band, we were never really like a party band or rock star band. We were just a transparent band. So the people that listened to us knew what they got. They knew what we were all about. When we did that No Hope record, and it pushed the band's career, magnitudes forward. When you have that many people looking at you at once, then actually Ben, our first manager, told me that. He said later on you're gonna blow up and have people like have all this negative backlash. That means you're succeeding. Like
really?
the haters made me famous.
Yeah.
That's totally true. Wow. Yeah. When we started getting negative criticism, you looked at how many comments you had on a post. It was just like, yeah, there's going to be negative stuff in here, probably equally to positive stuff, because these people have no idea who you are. They're just hearing a song that they're seeing everywhere and clicking on the link, and yeah, that band sucks.
Yeah.
And that's great, because that means people that have never seen you before are seeing you now.
Yeah.
I had to practice that, because for me, getting on the internet and reading 300 negative comments is kind of like, wow. But
yeah, overwhelming.
Think about how it must be to be Taylor Swift or something.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So.
Yep. Who typically writes and composes your songs?
I wrote all the lyrical content, and the band equally kind of wrote all the songs together. As our career got bigger and we went to different producers, we'd have co-writers. So we'd take trips out to LA and write songs with different producers and different writers.
Nice.
And so we had
so there's a collaboration going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty normal when a band gets to a certain size. They'll kind of outsource writing and do co-writes with well-known producers and writers. And
yeah. What was the kind of like the areas, and because I know you did a lot of traveling.
This next portion of the podcast is sponsored by Wicked Tires. Now, we all know that tires can be expensive, and especially with the holidays coming. We can all use a way to save money. And at Wicked Tires, you can save a lot by purchasing from their wide variety of used tires. The guys at Wicked Tires test all the tires and make sure that there are no leaks. Not just that, but they also make sure that their tires have plenty of tread. So what are you waiting for? Go on to Wicked Tires and save big. They also offer great prices on new tires for those who are interested. Check them out on the corner of East State and Alpine Road.
And what was kind of like your local type of places that you performed at?
Man, we all over. We were overseas a lot too, so we went to Europe quite a bit. Yeah.
Okay.
In Australia. Some of my favorite places, like Texas, San Antonio, Texas, I think to this day is still like one of our number one best markets in the country.
Wow.
One of our the Midwest is just the Midwest. The Midwest is weird because there's, Milwaukee or Chicago, and Chicago's into what it's into at the time.
Got it.
But man, anytime we played Texas, anytime we played California, Southern California, the Glass House, that was always a huge turnout. And of course, like we did 3 Warped Tours, so Warped Tour was awesome. That was, every day of the week was a giant crowd, no matter where you were. So, I really like Texas. That was probably my favorite state to play. Yeah.
What kind of areas were, or like places, or where you perform at?
I mean, throughout our career, we started playing in small venues, and they're different size markets. So that would be like a C market. You're playing to 300, 400 cap room every night, and your A market's going to be like your House of Blues in Chicago. That's your 700, 1,700 cap room.
Oh, okay.
So we did all of them. I mean, we did little dive bars to 100 people, and we did Alexandra Palace in Europe to 11,000 people.
Wow.
So
what was your favorite type of, or crowds, or?
I would still to this day, I would prefer a small, dirty, sweaty punk rock venue where everybody's,
you can connect more with the crowd.
Yeah, those are much more intimate and much more fun to play too. We've had shows where the crowd is singing so long that I can't hear myself in the monitors at all. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I can see that. Inspo for music, is that something that you relate to at all, or?
What kind of music?
Yeah, like what is there any type of music that inspires you, or any bands?
Yeah. I mean, I'm into all kinds of genres, so I listen to a little bit of everything. It's funny when I say this, and some people always laugh, but I'm like, without country music, I probably would have never learned how to identify with a melody or a chorus or a verse, or I grew up on a horse ranch, so definitely there was country. Always country playing in a radio on the barn owl. So I get inspiration from a lot of different things, other bands, real life. It's funny, we had a conference call last night with all the members of the Color Morale, and next year's the 10-year anniversary for that No Hope record. So we've had a couple festival offers and people reaching out about potentially coming to play a show. And Aaron and I, the guitar player, have been toying around with writing, and now we're toying around with maybe we should do an EP this year. And there's a lot of cool things in the works. So we were kind of trying to I don't know what kind of genre it's going to be. Like I'm I don't know what I'm going to write about either. I'm kind of like I've graduated to another chapter of life, and I'm
another phase.
Yeah. So it's
so you don't maybe have the struggles that you used to have or used to write.
Yeah, and that's when writing comes easiest, is when you're
struggling
at your worst.
Yeah.
So now that I'm doing pretty good, I'm not sure what the end result's going to be in that.
Yeah.
It'll be honest, like it always is, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can see that.
We'll see.
A bit of a struggle there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll probably come back to that a little bit here, but so that makes me think of also like what's a song throughout all the albums that you've had that maybe it's one of your favorite, or that you really felt deeply resonated with you?
Oh man, I mean,
all probably of them. Too many.
Yeah,
right.
You've got your favorite songs to play, and then you've got your songs that were popular and you hate playing because you've played them for so many years. For me, anything connected to that No Hope record, that was just such a special time in our band's career, and it connected to so many people. I think that No Hope record is it's a very, very special thing.
It's so interesting because I would kind of skim through your albums, and I think the No Hope definitely stood out to me.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you said, I resonated with some myself, but I think one of the ones that I liked, I think is called Learned Behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was one of the singles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Learned Behavior was a really big song, connected to a lot of people. That was one of the 2 singles that had music videos from that album. So the videos were pretty cool. They were, pretty heavy production, and they hired actors. And
wow, I'm going to check that out. I didn't know you guys had also.
Yeah, one of them I had, it was like this black, it was supposed to be like I think it was like chocolate syrup mixed with something. And they dumped it all over my head, and I was strapped down to a table with a doctor putting things in my face. And
Oh,
it
my
was
gosh.
pretty wild.
Yeah.
But that stuff, I remember it was delicious. Like it was chocolate pudding mixed with something. It was so good. So I kept eating it.
Yeah, kept
But,
licking it off.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like an embodiment of, negative supernatural thing.
Yeah,
it's
no,
pretty cool.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that. So you said you never played here in Rockford?
We did. We
Okay.
played. Yeah, we played. Over the years. In the early years, any place you could find to do a show. I mean, my first thought walking in here tonight was, man, this is be a rad venue to have some stuff go on here.
Yeah.
But that was back when there was really no scene. We were kind of making the scene. And we VFWs or. Any random building that somebody's uncle owned and let us throw a show there in the weekend. We had shows all over the place.
Constantly.
I remember we had a show in the upstairs of the Cherry Valley Post Office. And, the capacity up there was probably 120 people. We had to be over 300 people up there.
Wow.
And as everybody was jumping, you were watching the floor bow. And just praying to God that the floor didn't collapse and, hurt somebody.
Yeah.
And, we were the ones that rented the venue. So we're just watching this floor like, oh my gosh, please let us make it through the night.
Yeah. So I know that you guys had taken a break, but I didn't see.
Yeah. So about 2017, we just completed our third record with the label that we were with. And I got to a point where my mom had a pretty serious heart attack, and when you tour, you miss everything. You miss birthdays and funerals and weddings, and you miss everything. So for me, it was the first time in years that we were free agents. We didn't have to do anything. So we actually had a tour booked in Europe, and it was half the tour was sold out. It was going to be a successful run. Everybody was looking forward to it, and I just hit this wall where I had this crazy paranoia. I can't do this right now. I need to get off the road right now. Looking back on it, it was not the right way to handle that. I just kind of had a meeting with all the guys and just said, I'm not doing this tour. I got to stay home. The label already had plans for another record cycle, and it was tour, studio, tour, overseas, back, just, another repetitive cycle of tour. And for me, I just needed to be home. So I talked to the guys and told them, we could have a fill-in or find somebody to replace me for this, and they wouldn't do it. So we just ended up canceling the tour.
Oh,
yeah,
that sucks. But
but
you had to do what you had to do.
Yeah, looking back, that was not the right way to handle that. I wish I wouldn't have handled it that way.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't really explain. It was just like a really bad paranoia feeling that I had where I got to get off the road right now.
Yeah.
So
that's too bad. Did you guys travel? This is just an odd question, but did you guys travel on a bus, or was it just constant?
Depending on the
flights?
tours, sometimes buses,
Okay.
sometimes flights, sometimes van. We'd always prefer a van and trailer because you save so much money. Just
I can imagine, and just more comfortable
yeah.
probably too.
Yeah, and you just bring out some friends and stay in hotels every night, and it was just you save so much money when you do that. You know. But it gets to a point where you have crew and you have guitar techs, and you have to facilitate everybody too. So make sure everybody's comfortable.
Yeah. I know we talked briefly about it already, but where is the band today? So I know you had the break, and then
So Aaron, our guitarist, is in Madison. He's a full-time, extremely talented tattoo artist. So he's doing that at a shop in. I can't think of the name of his shop offhand, but his Instagram's Aaron Eugene. If anybody wants to check him out, if anybody's looking to get tattooed, he's fantastic. Bass player Mike is here in Rockford. He just got married. He's got a couple little girls, and I think he's going to school full time. So excited for him. Devin, other guitarist, is he works for A Day to Remember, so he's their tour manager. So he's on the road with A Day to Remember, working for them full time. And then our drummer Steve is drumming for a band called Senses Fail now, which is kind of cool because when we started the band, I remember him having Senses Fail posters in our practice spot. They were his favorite band, and now he's their drummer. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And then you said the 10-year anniversary is coming up. Well,
Yeah.
for the album, that one particular album,
the
not
No Hope
necessarily.
record, yeah. So we've got some ideas that we're throwing around, potentially doing a vinyl re-release and putting a couple acoustic songs on there. And, I think that'd be something really special for everybody that really connected to that record.
Yeah. Would you do any type of touring at all?
No, I don't think we're in a place now to tour. I mean, Devin and Steve's tour schedules are insane. Those are two pretty big bands. So
Yeah.
I don't think we'll do any touring, just maybe some pop-up shows and some festivals.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe at least a couple performances here and there
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yep.
That'd be cool. What is a positive and a negative takeaway from being on the road? And I ask that because I know how...
There's so many of each. I mean, it's, there's a million positives, especially when you grow in your career and you get to a certain size, and every night's, you in the early days, you strive for a successful night. You strive to sell more than $100 in merchandise and have more than 15 people show up. When you get to a certain point of your career and there's hundreds of people every night and you're selling thousands of dollars in merchandise, you already had a successful night. So, that plateaued. So, for me, I never really measured or gauged success that way. Mm-hmm. For me, it was all the conversations I'd have at the table. I'd always be very accessible. So I would never be hiding in the bus, or I would never be off doing my own thing. After our set, I would be at the table, just talking all night. I think that's one thing that connected a lot of people to our band, is that we were accessible. We were transparent. So, you'd have people that were fans of the band that would treat you like they were starstruck, and you instantly just chop the tree down. It's like, no, we're the exact same. I appreciate you tremendously. You appreciate me tremendously. We're the exact same. Yeah. So after that, those people became less of fans and more of friends. And they were there every time you came back around. That my biggest thing I took away from all the years of the band and touring is all the people it connected with, and friendships I still have to this day with people.
Do you?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Anything that, obviously, like you mentioned about being away from family and just a lot of other things, would you say, is there any other negative thing?
Yeah, I think the disturbance of the creative cycle. When you have labels, you have management, you have booking agents, you have tour managers, you have a million things that kind of can distract you from the creative process. For our band, we did that. The third record, the No Hope record, went against the grain. It went to a producer that no one else was really recording with. Our label wanted us to go one way, and we went a different way. We were at the end of our cycle, and we didn't really break yet. We weren't really a successful band yet. Doing things our own way and having 100% control of the creative process, the band blew up. With the next label we signed to, we lost a lot of that again, a lot of the creative process. They were trying to navigate us one way, and the magic wasn't there. It was to a degree, but not like it was in the No Hope cycle. There was so much magic that happened in that album, and it resonated. And when you can show a label in numbers, this was successful, to them it's successful. For me, when I'm on the road talking to hundreds of people a night, and there's no exaggeration there, hundreds of people every night, that's successful.
That's successful,
for me. And the creative process was a reflection of that success. So I think the hardest part for me personally was just involving so many people and having too many irons in the kettle with the creative process, for sure.
Did you ever feel any pressure at all in any form?
Oh yeah. When your label's shelling out thousands, tens of thousands of dollars for you to go to this producer and go write with this writer and go, you have to deliver, you have to recuperate that money before you're going to make any. So, there was always we never really had that in the old days. We just played music and wrote, and we were kind of naive to a lot of things. Yeah. The experience makes you better equipped and how to handle the industry and how to handle, situational things that come up with being in a band on tour and blah, blah, blah. But, looking back now, yeah, I think that we should have had more ownership in the creative process because, us being us is what made us us.
Yeah.
We didn't really need anybody's help for that.
Yeah.
And we're at a point now in our career where, we can do it all ourselves. We don't really need anybody. We're not going to tour. We're not going to, be on that level. So
yeah.
it's a perfect place to be.
Yeah. Now I have another question that I think about sometimes when we think about bands and stuff. Drugs, alcohol. Was that something that was...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There?
I mean, there's different ways to categorize drugs, I guess, and to me, some things that, maybe society or government have categorized as drugs aren't drugs to me. But yeah, you look at a lot of these old, like, bands that used to play arenas and now they're playing to bars, and 200 people in a bar and they've got drug issues and alcohol issues. Yeah. I mean, along the way, you can kind of develop a coping mechanism. I've never had an issue with anything like that. I have gotten to a place where my nerves were so tense all the time that, I probably drank a little more than I probably should. Never had a problem with it or anything, but, I could easily identify with, artists that don't know how to channel certain things into music anymore. They've kind of used that outlet and now they're just kind of trying to, to stay even keel, I guess. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of drugs and a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Right.
Yeah.
What do you have any memories that I guess that are like stand out to you that maybe you can share?
Man. Yeah. So many. I mean, my first thought when I think of the band is, I instantly just thought of hundreds of people and like people that I can remember their face right now and conversations and how many times we came through and in the early days slept on their floor, and in the later days put them on our guest list because they've been seeing us for, how many years, like come stand on stage and watch us play now. Like, I remember you always fear saying the wrong city when you address the crowd. And I did that
I
once.
See that.
We were playing Warped Tour in Portland and we went past we were playing Seattle. I thought we were in Portland because we went an extra day, had a day off and came backtracked. Oh. So I said the wrong city on stage and the first time I said it, people started booing, and then I said it again. People started booing, and then my friend was doing merch for Less Than Jake, and their merch tent was set up like right next to the stage. Yeah. So he wrote on a sign, "You're in Portland," or Portland or Seattle, whichever one we were actually in.
Oh my gosh!
And I'm like, wow, have I been saying Seattle? And the whole crowd were like, yeah. And I'm like, wow, guys, I'm really sorry. I've never done this before. It was raining, torrential downpour all day. Yeah. So I didn't get a chance to get out and walk around and kind of, make myself
acquainted with the city,
with the region.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely said the wrong city and got booed. It sucked.
Wow.
But I kind of halfway saved it. I remember asking, I was like, well, who here's from Seattle? And it was like, one group of people in there. I'm like, well, I was talking to them. And, I laughed about it. And
folded smooth.
At the end of the day, nobody cared. It was Warped Tour. They had a blast.
Yeah.
So, and we played that set in the pouring rain. It was awesome. There was no lightning. So they let, if there's rain, it's rain. That's Warped Tour. Yeah. So I remember playing that. I was soaked head to toe. Everybody was soaked. So in the grand scheme of things, nobody cared. They had a blast.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
I always feared the day when that and it happened. It finally happened.
So so you had feared it, and then it happened. Yeah. I got it. And then did you continue to have that same fear?
No, I made sure when we got to a venue, the first time you go out and say where you're at, you're good to go from there. Once you address it the right way the first time. So that's just a thing that band guys do. They say, what's up, Detroit, and you better be in Detroit.
Yeah, I think for me too, it'd be like mispronouncing something. It'd be like, especially if it's like the bigger cities where you're familiar with.
We would do acoustic sets often, and we played this cover of a song called Too Close, and I'd always forget the second verse. I don't know why, but I would always forget what the second verse was right before it happened, and then I remembered it. We've played that song a million times. For some reason, that second verse, I always just had trouble remembering it. So there was one time where I paused for like a delay of 3 or 4 seconds because I could not remember the second verse, and Devin stopped, and he came in when I sang, so I paused, and then I thought of it, and the song continued. I've never done that before.
Yeah.
So, kind of crazy.
Yeah, for sure. What do you have going on? Is there anything that you have going on besides?
Yeah, so we just ended outdoor season, the BMX track, so I'm going to have nothing going on for a couple weekends. And, as of last night, the band had a meeting, and we're going to start writing, so my time off this winter from the BMX track,
it's going to be
probably spend it in Madison with Aaron, starting to write some songs.
Got it.
So very excited. Aaron and I have a chemistry that's pretty awesome. We've written a lot of songs together, so I'm excited to get creative with that. For me, I'm a creative mind. So daytime, I'm a graphic designer, and I do a lot of different ways, different creative ways to kind of calm myself. So walking into a space like this, this is a creative haven in here. So, it's cool when for me, I'd have to be somewhere to be comfortable with it. And then the next time I came back through, I had familiarity and I was comfortable with it. You go to a creative space and you instantly have comfortability with it.
Yeah.
I've always thought that was so cool. That happened to me with a lot of coffee shops all over the world. For some reason, coffee shops always just felt really comfortable in coffee shops.
That's me.
Yeah.
I love coffee shops.
So, yeah.
And is there anything else that you are into, or you do on your spare time, maybe?
Yeah, a lot of photography. Doing photography since high school.
Really?
41 now, so I've been taking photos for a long time. Of course, bikes. So this is super random, and I get this all the time. So I have one of the biggest Nightmare on Elm Street collections in the world.
The movies?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
oh my gosh.
When I was a kid, I won a video sweepstakes back when there was Pacific video stores all over the country.
Yeah.
I entered the sweepstakes, and I won the grand prize. But I was 7 or 8.
Oh my gosh.
The grand prize, you got to fly to LA and meet Robert Englund and be on the set of Nightmare 4, which was the one coming out.
Wow.
So I couldn't go, of course, because I was a little boy.
Oh, true.
But I won this big prize pack, all this memorabilia, this Freddy Krueger stuff. So ever since that, I was obsessed with those movies.
So you've been a fan of
Yeah.
Freddy.
So fast forward a good number of years later, and you're traveling the whole world and in different cities every day, checking out comic shops and horror shops, and started going to conventions all the time, and started collecting stuff. And now I have 3 or 4 of these rooms full of Nightmare on Elm Street things.
That's so cool.
Nowhere to put them all. They're all just in boxes.
Yeah.
So I've been in Fangoria magazine and Horror Hound magazine. I've had my collection featured.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool when we signed Fearless, their publicists kind of went through our catalog and what are you guys into? 'Cause, they can kind of find different creative ways to promote the band through different outlets. And I remember, so this is super random, but I have a huge horror collection, specifically Nightmare on Elm Street. And he's like, well, do you want to maybe have it featured in magazines? Yeah. I've subscribed to that magazine right now. I've grown up, reading Fangoria and Horror Hound. So getting an interview and my collection featured in those magazines were one of the coolest things ever.
Wow.
So yeah, it's super random, but I love horror films and going to conventions.
Really cool. Yeah.
But yeah, and really into writing, creative writing, journalism, spoken word. I remember I used to do sound at Rock Valley many years ago, and this spoken word poet named Saul Williams came in and did slam poetry. And I remember I would, set up a PA and a microphone and subs and, had everything set up. And I remember I'm sitting there, he's coming out and walks out and the crowd claps and he grabs the mic in the stand. He brings it over to me. He goes, "I won't need that tonight, sir." and just goes into slam poetry. And I was like, that was a completely life-changing experience for me. Number one, because I got paid to do nothing all night. And number two, I got introduced to Saul Williams and everything that he is. And if you're not familiar, the listeners, look up Saul Williams. He's unbelievable spoken word artist.
Okay.
So really into that, of course, music, being creative, writing songs, and bikes. Yeah.
I'm interested into what, how's your process to writing?
It's different because it used to be, take whatever, anytime you're uncomfortable, you're dealing with something negative, there's a outpouring of, creative writing that comes with it.
Yeah.
When you get older and you get to a place where everything's kind of good and you don't really have any struggles, it's hard to write. So, I'm about to have a better understanding of that, writing this new stuff, because I got to figure out what I relate to with that, So it's weird when things go catastrophically wrong. It's really easy to be creative, and when everything's kind of going good, for me, it's kind of hard to be creative.
Yeah.
So
yeah. No, I can totally. I think that's something that probably scares me about sometimes getting to a place where I'm like, okay, everything is just fine and like kind of boring.
Yeah, it is. I do design now. Graphic design is my daytime thing, but a lot of times it's it doesn't call for creativity. Sometimes it does, but for the most part, you're making corporate things, or you're taking someone else's logo or someone else's artwork and applying it to a vehicle or a billboard or whatever. So you don't get to be as expressive. I've learned different ways to be expressive with graphic design, but for the most part, it's somebody else's. It's not really yours. Mm-hmm. So it's a learning process too, I guess.
Yeah. Is that something that you said you went to school for? Or?
No. Yeah, I did a long time ago. Back in the pit days, actually, in the back room, Mike and a guy named Mike Solon used to do this clothing company called Basement Clothing. And I remember going back there and just, getting on the computer and watching him make stuff. And I kind of started learning graphic design. That was back in probably the mid-90s, early to mid-90s. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of my introduction to graphic design, and I fell in love with it. I've always known that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I'd end up doing one day. I did the band for so many years, and I've always had a really cool life. I've always gotten to do awesome things that I enjoyed. I've never had to work, and doing a job I can't stand going to every day just to make money.
Yeah.
I've been really, really lucky to always do things I love doing. Yeah. So, my job, I had to do a resume recently. I went back and started at the timeline of, my young adult work life. I'm like, man, I've always had a cool job.
Yeah, because did you ever just have a normal job?
No, they were always skate parks or bike shops or bike companies or, touring rock band. They've always been really cool things. Mm-hmm. So really lucky and fortunate for that.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to share to like somebody who's maybe thinking about going into a band or?
Oh yeah. I mean, do it. Play to 5 people, play to no people, play to the other bands that play the show with you that no one came to. That's when those pivotal moments are going to be defining moments for later on when you're successful at it. And if you want to be successful at it, you will be. And the relentless pursuit of the perfection of your craft is what's going to get you there. So to me, I played the same show to 5 people as I did to 5,000 people. Mm-hmm. That was my time and my, my art that I got to express myself the way I wanted to. So I think if somebody wants to be successful in music now, there's so many resources and ways to learn and advice you can gather. I mean, YouTube is an outlet nowadays.
Yeah.
I'm
major.
A little older, so for me, I couldn't figure out how to change my windshield wipers on YouTube. Like I had to go out and put them on upside down 15 times before I figured it out.
Yeah, true.
You know, nowadays, I mean, if somebody wants to learn how to submit a press packet to a label, or, you know, go to a show and talk to a band and figure out who the email is to send the record to, or that band produced their record with this producer, I need to email his management to figure out how much it costs to go record with him. There's so many resources available now for that. You know, for us, like, you know, we were naive to all that. We didn't really know. So I think that was a time where I really appreciate those times, being naive and being excited and being nervous and intimidated. You know, that's when you feel most alive through all of it. So, yeah, if there's young artists or young musicians or, you know, whatever their outlet is or whatever their craft is, you know, do it every day and get really good at it. And then someday you'll come to the fork in the road of whether you want to do it for a job or not. Maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't, but it's dependent on you, you know?
Yeah. Would you say that if money-wise, if somebody wants to do it and they're thinking, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be famous, would that be a good...
Yeah, if you're playing in a band to be
motivation?
rich, then don't be a lawyer or go to medical school. You know, if you're being in a band because you have to, then you're going to be rich no matter what. Maybe not financially, but, you know, you're going to be rich somehow. But yeah, if you're looking to get rich, then don't be in a band. Just go be a doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of easier ways to make money.
Yeah. All right. That's all the questions I have for you today. I don't know if you wanted to share anything else.
Pretty much covered it. Yeah. It was awesome.